Okay, so here we are on day 7 of the blog on this thing called prayer. This weekend I attended a workshop by Jeff Testerman, who talked about the discovery of your purpose and the joy of discovering the plan that God has for you, and basically taking your dreams and determining how you're going to actually get there, and discerning how you can even figure out what your dreams are. And I've pretty much gone through this process for the last 5 years, so my focus is on how am I going to get the world to pray and find the truth about prayer in a non-threatening way and non-condemning way, just inspiring and organic. And some of the things that I've been looking at are time management, defining success, and accepting the things that are simply God's plan for ultimate glory, even if it's going against what we find is, or we're labeling as successful. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from one of his books called Bible-Based Businesses. Just to kind of help you along with finding the balance in life between work, living out a dream, finding your purpose, accepting failure, defining success. Did I say that already? I'm just going to start. As in all areas of our life, our spiritual walk or our physical walk, there is a balancing beam. We try to walk down the middle of the road or the narrow path. On both sides are extremes that we can fall to. We tend to lean toward the extremes one way or the other. The concept of contentment is one of those areas we have to be careful of. The scriptures warn us about laziness. Ecclesiastes says, "The fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh." He just gives up and doesn't bother working. But then immediately in verse 6 it also says, "Better a handful with quietness than both hands full, together with toil and grasping for the wind." Here is the danger of overworking. We have the danger of laziness. We have the danger of overworking. In this area of contentment, we have the danger of being content in a state we're in or a condition we're in when we actually should be pressing forward to achieve something better. It sounds confusing, and it can be confusing. But if we go quietly before the Lord and wait upon Him, be still to hear His voice, then He will lead us down that narrow path. He will show us, for our personal situation, how to avoid falling in the ditch on either side. This illustration might be helpful in trying to understand that balance. Think back to a time when you learned a new skill. For example, imagine yourself learning how to golf. You've never done it before, so you go out and learn the basics of the swing and the stance, and you practice and practice. When you're first starting out, you're not going to be that good. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. But you need to be content with the fact that you're learning and making progress. Of course, you're not a professional yet and have a lot of room to improve, but you're content and satisfied where you are right then. At the same time, you're not content to stay there forever. There is a dissatisfaction pushing you to move on. But there is a contentment that comes from being where you need to be at the moment based on your skill level, your time involved, and just accepting who you are. That is so true, and it's resonating so much with me right now. This is just a side note, but I'm just going to say this one more time. Be content with where you are, but dissatisfied enough to push forward. Too often we beat ourselves up instead of recognizing the improvement we've made thus far and being satisfied and content with it. We may look at somebody who is much better and whose skill level is much higher and become discontent, get discouraged, put ourselves down, and strive in ways that won't help our skill development. It can actually hurt and hinder our progress. That kind of discontentment is wrong. Finding the balance. This concept carries over into other areas of our lives. For example, with self-improvement concerning our character and our spiritual growth, we need to be content with who we are in the Lord. I am accepted by Him. He has received me. I am loved by Him. But at the same time, there is a discontentment to press on more. I want to become more intimate with Him. I want to know His ways more. I want to be able to rejoice in Him more. I want to experience His love more. It seems like a disconnect, but it's not. It works. Those who have experienced it understand exactly what I'm saying. You can have contentment and discontentment at the same time, just like you can experience death and life at the same time. Oh, the mysteries of God's ways and of His creation. Where the line of contentment? At what point should I be content? Concerning our possessions, God makes this pretty clear in 1 Timothy 6:8. It says, "And having food and clothing, with these be content." Just the basic things. God says that if you have food and clothing, with these be content. It's simple and clear. Another word for content is satisfied. I am satisfied. My stomach isn't stuffed to where I'm sick, but neither is it empty to where I'm hurting. I am satisfied and I'm full. We need to look at our lives and say, that's really all I need, food and clothing. If I had something more than that, it doesn't mean I can't enjoy it or that I need to feel guilty about it. It just means that I need to say thank you to God for blessing me with more than food and clothing. And while I have it, I will enjoy it. But if I lose it, I'll still be content. The amount of goods that I have won't affect my state of satisfaction and contentment. Here is a quick list of helpful tips for experiencing contentment. Number 1, recognize that you were bought with a price. You are not your own. You belong to God. It's not up to you to decide what you need to make through this life. God already stated that contentment should come with food and clothing, and that's all we need. Since we are not our own, it's up to God to take us beyond that. Number 2, embrace whatever you have right now with thankfulness. This is a real key. Be thankful for what you have. Don't look at what may be perceived as the unfairness of life. Don't ask, why do they get this and I don't? Instead, be thankful and express thankfulness to God. Go to Him and say, God, thank you that I'm able to eat this food today. Thank you that I have these clothes on my back. Be very expressive in your thankfulness to God daily. Number 3, don't compare yourself with others. Don't compare your possessions. Don't compare vacations or skills or how you look. I think we all know what happens when you do that. 2 Corinthians 10:12 says, They're measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves. This is not wise. Number 4, focus on what you have, not on what you don't have. That one seems kind of obvious, but we still don't do that very often, do we? So much in our life depends simply on what we focus on. You can always look at those who have less than you, and you can always look at those who have more than you. Either one can create a problem. So just focus on what you have. This ties in again with the idea of thankfulness. Focus on what you have, not on what you don't. 5, remember things don't bring happiness. They can be enjoyed, but they are not the source of our happiness. Don't deceive yourself into thinking that if you get a nicer car, then you will be happy, or if you move into a bigger home, that you'll be happy. Those things will not bring happiness. Number 6, avoid catalogs and online sales pages. Ooh, I was just looking at one today. This is a practical step. How many times have you been sitting in your home completely content with where you are and how your day's been? Then the mail comes in the mail catalog. In the mail is a catalog, and suddenly you find a dozen things that you need now, right now. That's the danger of those types of things. I have to admit that I have to be very careful myself because I love to read. I love to increase my knowledge. It's easy for me to buy things that I don't need. I need to be content with the books and the programs I have right now and not constantly wanting new things and convincing myself that I need them. It's an area for all of us to be careful of. 7, be content with what you have and who you are. Always give thanks, but don't be afraid to improve yourself in the areas of your life. Contentment means being happy wherever you are and being free from a complaining spirit. But it does not mean that you have to settle for subpar living or subpar skills. This is another part of that paradox I spoke of earlier. We can be happy where we are, but there are times we need to look at our lives and say, I do need to make some improvements here. It would be nice for my family to have a bigger house. Be content with where you are. But if you have the right attitude and are thankful to be where you are, then there's nothing wrong with saying, maybe I'll look for something a little bit nicer. In the area of personal skills, there's nothing wrong with developing skills in our lives so that we can be ready and available to take the next step up. I believe that Joseph, while he was in prison, was content in one sense, but he never stopped developing the skills and working. He didn't develop a complaining and grumbling spirit. He was content, but he also looked for opportunities to advance himself when the time was right. Remember this, if you're not happy where you are now, you will not be happy when you arrive where you think you want to be. Contentment is not just dealing with material things. You also need to be content with how you look, how tall you are, the color of your hair. These are all part of being content and satisfied with how God made us and where He has put us. In Hebrews 5, it says that the opposite of being content is covetousness. Covetousness. We need to flee from covetousness, which is always desiring more and more and more. Lack of contentment in business has been a major part of the fall of our economy. Discontentment leads us to make compromises in order to drive our sales. Paul warns Timothy that the desires for things and the desire for money leads to temptation and a snare. May God give us wisdom to enter into that place of rest and balance where we are content with the things that He calls us to, and yet we're willing to improve our circumstances as God prompts us and moves us along. May God bless you with the ability to enjoy the things that He gives you, enjoying the life that He chooses to bless you with. Hopefully you got something out of this, And if you could join me in prayer in allowing me to remain content with the pace of this Just Pray project, not allowing external fears or personal situations dampen the pace that God has laid out before me. Keep me excited, motivated, and focused to move in a momentous way as fast as He can take me, as slow as He will go. In Jesus' name, amen.